says 2:30, but we're running a little bit behind.
On the schedule, it says 2:30.
Yeah, I thought someone said we were running a little behind, so it would start a little bit later. But since you guys are all here, let's get started. So we spend almost $70 billion, that's 70 with a B, annually in security investments. And clearly some things are working, but some things are not, because we're still getting breached. I'm sorry, did we start without you?
That's okay. I mean, I was going to introduce you guys.
Okay.
Have you guys introduce?
Oh, sure. All right, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Sorry.
No, it's okay, it's okay.
Okay. Isaac?
Yeah.
Isaac.
Isaac.
Isaac?
Yeah.
So, Isaac Cutler, okay, CTO and co-founder of SafeBreach. He has more than a decade of experience researching and working in the computer security space. He's a recognized industry speaker, having spoken at DEF CON, Black Hat USA, Hat in the Box, RSA Europe, CCC, and H2HC. Prior to founding SafeBreach, Isaac served as CTO at Security Art, information security firm. And before that, he was SOC team leader at Radware. And then we have Danielle Howe, got that right, who is VP of Strategy and Marketing at SafeBreach. Let's see if I can condense this here. Because she has an incredible amount of experience. She has 15 years of experience bringing new and innovative security technologies to market. She's a frequent speaker at conferences, so thank you for being here. She's a contributor on security for Security Week and RSA. Prior to SafeBreach, she was VP of Strategy and Marketing at
Adelon,
which was acquired by our sponsor, Microsoft.
She is responsible for security solutions at Palo Alto Networks, driving growth in critical IT initiatives like virtualization, networks, segmentation, and mobility. Danielle was co-founder of a high-speed networking chipset startup. Okay. And she holds...
You have a longer bio than I do.
I do have a longer
Yes,
version.
she does.
Yeah.
I need to shorten it. I didn't know you were going to read that.
Well, I need to
hold
make
two
mine
US
longer, I don't know.
You can tell us about the two U.S. patents you hold later on. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. All right, thank you for the introduction. Let's get started again. So we spend annually almost $70 billion, that's 70 with a B, in security investments. Clearly, when you look at the breaches in the headlines, something's not working. There are things that we're doing a better job of, but clearly there are certain things that are still not working well. And so what we're going to be presenting today is just taking a different approach. Let's take an offensive approach to security, where we learn from the black hats. They're doing a good job of penetrating our network. How can we learn from them, put ourselves in the mindset, and kind of analyze their skill sets, and bring that to the table to better protect our infrastructure. So in terms of how this presentation is going to work, I'm going to start off just talking about the problems and the things that we're going to be able to learn from the black hats. And then I'm going to hand it over to Itse, who will go into the best practices of some of the things that, as a hacker, you might consider. What kind of tactics, what type of breach methodologies are you more likely to adopt in the network as a hacker? Kind of putting yourself in this mindset and thinking about some of the ways to reduce the risk. I think we heard from the panel today. Security ultimately is about risk management. I don't think everyone is going to do a 100% effective job in security. It's just how to manage that risk in your environment. So for security professionals like yourselves, obviously security is an evolving challenge. We're tasked with protecting an environment that is constantly changing. You've got new uneducated users, you've got new endpoints to secure, you've got new applications, and at the same time, the hackers continually to evolve, and so there are new threats that you need to be protecting against. And what we heard from the CISOs today is, while now there's a lot of different security technologies that have been developed to counter these types of threats. And unfortunately, that's also a problem, right? You might have a Palo Alto Networks, next generation firewall in your network. You might have a FireEye sandbox, right? Malware sandboxing. You've got, I threw a SourceFire IPS in there, and then you're collating all of this with maybe a Splunk SIM. So you've got all of these different security solutions all meant to address a specific point problem. It's a point product for a specific solution. You're putting it all together. It's different vendors, different management systems, different configurations. How do you understand the security posture of the entire organization? How do you get that overview, that complete view of the security posture in your organization? It's very, very tough. And you also spend a lot of time reacting instead of being proactive and offensive. We spend a lot of our time patching. We're looking at vulnerabilities, and it's like chasing your tail. It's this never-ending list of vulnerabilities that you need to patch in all of these different vendors. And then you add to that the fact that there's always limited time and resources when an attack occurs. You don't know where to prioritize your risk. A breach is going to happen. I think there's a saying that either you've been breached or you just don't know about it. Well, where as a CISO or a security professional should you prioritize and address the risk in your network? Which is a high priority? Which solution, which security controls is working as expected? So let's put ourselves in the shoes of a black hat. What are they doing that is more effective than all this money and resources that we're throwing at the problem, and yet they're still being successful? Well, one is that they're being very creative about their breach methods. They're finding new ways to get into the network. INSIG is going to talk about the attack kill chain, right? You've got your infiltration, you've got your lateral movement, and you've got your exfiltration. He's going to go through a demo. Here are some of the easy ways, some of the best practices of how to properly secure your network. And what are the creative methods? Second is they're using automation to optimize the attacks. So if we're not incorporating that in our infrastructure, then we're already at a loss, because we know we don't have enough cyber talent in the world today. So we've got to use automation to help make make us much more effective. And then finally, they're continuous and relentless. They're going to look for that one hole in the network that you haven't, that you didn't realize was a network. So how do you counter that? How do you have that continuous validation approach where you're constantly looking for the holes in the network and not just waiting for them to be found by the hacker? All right, so ITSIC, hacker and hacker extraordinaire. So I'll hand it to you to play the hacker.
Okay. So following up what Danielle said, and to kind of portray the second part of our presentation, I'm going to present a few methods, a few ways that hackers are using today to hack into networks and to extract information from it. In the beginning, when I made the presentation, I initially made a choice to avoid vulnerabilities. I didn't want to use zero-day or any kind of a joker that people say, oh, you know what, but it's only this kind of part, or maybe if I would have patched that, none of that mattered to me. All the methods I will present today are pretty much generic, and they are still working today for me when I do pen tests for other companies and for other hackers as well. To kind of get into the mindset of now we're playing the hacker and what we would like to achieve, we need to keep two goals in mind. The first one is that we're very resourcefulness, we're very motivated. Somebody just paid us a lot of money to hack into a company, or hacking into that company will make our monthly paycheck available. So when we go in that mindset, we are trying to think outside of the box to see what we can do with the information and knowledge and data that we got into the company that we hacked. The other one is to be determined. Again, hackers are very determined to get the job done. Again, it's dependent on either it's financial motivation or activism with something else, but determination plays a huge part of it. And then they won't stop pounding, they won't stop trying. There is no real downside. I mean, in most cases, it's really hard to eventually identify the person or the country where the actual attack actor coming from. But they have the motivation to keep going, and they have the resourcefulness on their side trying to get the job done. The first thing that we're going to speak about is infiltration. I mean, obviously right now we're hackers and we want to hack this company that we're set to do. The first thing we need to do is we need to get in the company to begin with. And obviously there's many ways. There's many ways to get into an employee computer. Popular ways will be client-side vulnerabilities, exploits. I get a person to surf into a website, or the person surfing to a website that I already have control over. He has unpatched browser, boom, he's get exploited, I'm in. But then again, this plays the vulnerability card. And I do believe that vulnerabilities, while they play a huge role in infiltration, they're not the end of the game, and they're certainly not all of the game. So what other ways do you think we can infiltrate a company without using vulnerabilities? Social engineering. So social engineering is a very great method. I can do it using a web base. I can try to chat to a person, do it Facebook, LinkedIn. I can also try to email him directly. Now, most of the customers, most of the employees, and we heard it in the CISO panel, the training element nowadays is very strong. People are aware of social engineering. People are aware that this stuff is coming toward them. And a few of the most common examples are employees will usually won't download an application from a strange email. So when we try to get our malware running on the employee workstation so we can get our foothold in the door, it will be a problem because the employee will, even if he won't suspect, even if he will play along with the social engineering act, it will still reach the moment where he will understand that he needs to download an executable, and that might not be the case. So one of the things that, again, and this is from the Hacker's Playbook, there is many types of file formats for many different platforms that you can utilize to actually run a code without that code being an actual executable or an exe file or a Windows case. And here we have example for two file formats that you may not have heard about, maybe you did. And when I will send a link with these to any of you that has running Windows, and you will double click them, I'll actually get the opportunity to run code on your machine. Now, again, coming from the training and the employee's point of view, they do not suspicious that CHM or HTA, that these extensions are malicious, and they can be maybe, again, social engineered to think it's part of some sort of an IT upgrade or some sort of an application that they must install a double click to configure the workstation. The truth is, these are executable formats that hackers can leverage to get into your employees' computers. Now, this again goes to say that hackers are resourcefulness. They will look for other ways, creative ways. And as I mentioned, there's a huge list of different file formats, depends on the platform and the version, that you can leverage to actually get code execution without actually sending a plain exe file to the victim. Moving on, assuming that one of the employees did click on the CHM or the HDL file, and we have a malware running in the employee end station. Now the question asked is, how do we get to the target? In most of the cases, when we target the secretary or some external source customers, party, they may not have the information that we require. They do not have the financial information or the healthcare information. So we have to pivot ourselves toward the company, toward the database, or to the place where we can actually go and get the goodies that we can then sell or use for other purposes. And again, what will be the way to get from one point to the other in the network without using vulnerabilities? How do you think a hacker can get from one computer to the other without exploiting any vulnerabilities? Still credentials, yes, but let's assume that still the credentials won't get us because the person on the computer doesn't have the privilege. What's another method that we can then employ? Sorry? Okay, so going back to the credential, this is a key component because pass the hash and other similar attacks has a huge potential. What we can do once we're in the network and we're on a computer that is connected eventually to an Active Directory or some repository, we can use this computer to actually brute force other people's accounts. Now, brute forcing is not a vulnerability per se. It's basically a feature when all these application systems allow me to give a username and a password, and then they will tell me whether I'm correct or not correct with the information. So even if I land on a secretary computer and I know that I want to have the credentials of a DBA or the CFO, I don't need actually to get to his computer. I can actually brute force it, again, or his computer itself, and get to it. So lateral movement without exploitation is possible. And brute forcing, one of the oldest techniques, is still vulnerable today. It's still active today as it was in other places in the past. And again, this is not a vulnerability. There's no exploit for it. It's simply abusing the authentication mechanism and the way networks are working today to the hacker's benefit.
You could also try just default passwords.
Default passwords,
They have
it's
not been changed.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a private case. You can always try default password, vendor passwords, weak passwords to begin with, and then you can progress to a much bigger list. Yes. Okay, and now we reach the stage, the happy stage for us as the hackers. We got in. We managed an employee to open our HTA. We pivoted in the network. We brute force our way, and now we're at the place where we have information that we would like to steal. This is where most of the companies and most of the people don't realize, that they still have a control to prevent it. It's not necessarily given that if a hacker managed to get in and get to a certain point in the network, that he will be able to then take the information outside. So there's still a battle that we can fight here, and I'm going to show you 3 techniques of how a hacker can do it, and then we can discuss about how we can mitigate it further down. So the first thing that I'll demonstrate right now is basically using ICMP. ICMP is not a very common protocol. Not a lot of people are aware of it because it has little value to the business. So usually you will encounter that specific protocol when you have network issues, and that will be the protocol that people will use to kind of try to understand if there's connectivity issues or the segments are working. So most companies do keep their ICMP open between segments, sometimes even between very secure segments. Again, because IT is using it to troubleshoot some of the way. Ping is one of the best free utilities that you can get to actually test for these kind of issues. However, the default ping, the built-in ping binary in my Mac, in Linux, and in Windows even, allows you to specify a specific payload. So while it looks very harmless that right now I'm pinging my own company, I'm actually using a pattern in the ping. Now, since I'm the attacker, I can be prepared for that, and I can set up a sniffer on my domain or any server for that kind of purpose. I can actually use what can be seen from a high-level perspective, a very common routine network diagnostic sequence as a way to actually exfiltrate credit cards, information. Obviously, ping cannot carry a big information such as TCP. However, I can divide and split it to small chunks and then use a number of series of ping sequence to transfer the information. So this is one very common trick, and if you read about the most sophisticated APTs, and I suspect up to this point and even in the future, you will see that ICMP is almost always used either as a CNC channel or as an exfiltration channel. And it's simply because people are not aware of it, they're not aware of what can be actually used with it, so they just keep it open between the entire network. And that's one of the common things that hacker can do to exfiltrate information just under the radar. Any questions? Okay. Another thing that is also using ping is traceroute. Again, this is also a very common network debugging utility to kind of try to understand what the hops between me and a specific server. And again, we can use traceroute, which is again a built-in utility that you can find in most Mac OS and Linux and Windows to actually signal our server on certain information. Here, I'm actually using traceout, and one of the features that traceout allows me to do is specify the packet size. So essentially, what seems to be a very simple feature, just to specify the packet size, I can use this scale to actually transfer in a covert way a few bits to my server each time. So what again, what would look like a very innocent trace route to just test the connectivity between my company, my server, and another server can be used to extricate information in a very covert way. So as you can see, I cannot control the payload with this command. However, I can control the packet size. Therefore, I can build a mechanism that will use that packet size in order to signal me different information. Moving to to another option, again, all within the built-in tools. I didn't bring anything, I didn't install anything. This is a regular Mac OS with the latest OS 6 installed on it. Is using the quality of service, the TOS field. Again, traceroute allow me to specify a specific parameter that I can control what will be the type of service that I would like to specify in the specific traceroute. And here I have a range that goes between 0 to 25. So I have a complete byte that I can control each time. And I can use that option. And again, create a sequence of innocent looking trace routes, and each of these trace routes will end up including a specific byte that I chose to as a quality of service header. And again, since I can control the destination, since I am on the receiving end, I can definitely sniff it back and reassemble it to create a much more reasonable data on my side. And this all would look like, on a high-level perspective, as IT personnel or as IT diagnostic tools that most people will just assume that they're happening and won't pay much attention to them. Any questions?
Are you going to go into how you would, I mean, you sort of shared a bit about it, but how would a hacker then utilize that?
So yes, definitely. So just going back to these examples, again, so for instance, let's assume that I want to take a credit card. And I'm right now on a computer in a very secure network. So when I can't bring my own tool, or bringing my own tools kind of risks me showing away to the company that I am in their servers. So I can do a ping to a server, any Amazon, I can buy any machine anywhere, and just have it ping to there. So I can use this flag, for instance, to try to take information. So for instance, that is my phone number. So I can actually just send pings with my phone number to an outside server. But the same method I could use to take credit cards and any kind of information and just ping them one by one. And from the company perspective, from an IT perspective, it will mostly be allowed in firewalls, again, because it's using for network diagnostics. And there is not much attention to ICMP protocol because it's not very business oriented. So that will be one way. And again, using traceroute, I can reach the very same conclusion. I can use the packet size as an indicator to specify a signaling method for me, saying, okay, 52 is A, 53 can be B, and etc. And I can create this complete dictionary, and again, trace routing to a server that I control in the cloud, and eventually there reassemble all the packets into one complete data information. And in a much easier way, traceroute also allows this as an IP header option called TOS, which I can completely control and just specify 1 byte at a time. Obviously, a hacker will write a script to automate that. It won't do it manually, but the idea remains the same. I can exfiltrate 1 byte. I can eventually exfiltrate 1 giga. It will just take me more time, but the option is there. Any other questions?
So the packets which are receiving on the recipient end, right, at the server, is also under control of hacker?
Yeah, I mean, it's reasonable to assume that me as a hacker, I probably bought some server or domain to get information coming to me eventually. And I can do it today with instance computing like Amazon. I can just take a stolen credit card and purchase a computer for a few hours and use that instance to receive the data on my hand and then to erase it, and there will be no traces of it. And from a perspective of network, it will be simply pings flying from one server to another, nothing that is strange or meaningful to people who doesn't look into the details.
So for ping to work, he has to be in the network, right? Usually ping won't work from the outside of it.
No, I'm talking right now, I'm inside of the network,
Okay.
and I try to ping the information outside. Yes. Yes.
If anyone was looking, which I think is the Dutch normally look, would you see a very high number of outbound trace routes to ICPS?
That's a
I would
great.
say something's unusual.
That's a great question. And here we encounter different communication concepts. So I don't have to do it all in one day or 1 hour or 1 minute. I can kind of like spread spectrum the conversation to take place over a few days, and then the intervals will be long enough so
Yeah,
it,
then you're not gonna see it.
exactly. It will be just
Yeah, you won't see it
just a
going
white
forward.
noise.
It's too long time based.
Exactly.
So if you're
Yes.
doing like a camp offer, right, you would not see them in your regular, let's say, you have a regular PC, same user base, you compare it for the average. you
So,
find it, right?
I'm not saying that there is no ways. If you know what you're looking for, then obviously you can fine-tune security controllers to find it. I'm saying that usually these kind of actions goes unnoticed because IT people use them and they're used for everyday troubleshooting. So it won't be much of an anomaly comparing, for instance, sending an email to an address that was never sent email before, or accessing a website in a foreign country which you never accessed before. Okay? So, as I mentioned, why is it working? Why is it such a simple technique is still working and still been able to help hackers to either signal their malwares or extract information? Again, because what we're doing here is rewriting an already existing concept. ICMP is often mistakenly as a protocol that is only used for network connectivity, but it really can host a payload on it, and you can really use ICMP and ping to carry information. And this abuse of protocol, this abuse of a feature that is otherwise used on a daily basis is the key to basically get exfiltration information from even the most secure companies in the world today. Okay, moving to another demo. DNS. Who haven't heard about DNS nowadays? It's the backbone of the internet. Every time we do something, a DNS query goes up to try to translate the host name to an IP. And strangely enough, even this very simple action is useful for an attacker to extract information. Let's have a look. So nobody will say that doing an NS lookup to my domain is something that is weird. I mean, just trying to solve some address in the internet, right? Now, what will happen if I will again put my phone number to that address? I mean, then again, just trying to see if there's such an instance in this company. But the truth is that every time that I'm doing this NS lookup, every time that I'm looking at a domain that I as a hacker can control, basically what happens is the request will propagate through the entire infrastructure to my server. Because, for instance, I do own the domain safebridge.com, and I am the only authority that can answer whether such subdomain exists or not. So when I'm doing the NS lookup, obviously there's caching mechanisms. Eventually, whatever the request originates from, it will travel to my server and ask whether such subdomain exists or not. And that will be good enough for me, because all I want to do each time that I'm doing this NS lookup is just to piggyback on the request and enter some information. It doesn't have to make sense. It will be just some information, and it will be carried over on the query up to my server. And on a series of DNS requests, I can eventually exfiltrate credit cards, files, information, and nowadays hackers even built DNS tunnels which actually allows them to operate TCP/IP-like application, all on top of the DNS request and response mechanism. Now, this is one of the biggest challenge, and we'll get to it. We'll review the best practice. As opposed to ICMP, which can be an informed decision to prevent, nobody can actually shut down DNS. It just doesn't make sense to do it. And then again, there is no way to predictively prevent or think about all the possible malicious or non-standard domains. They can sometimes have a very meaningful name. They can also sometimes be a duplicate or a typo of a big company, and it may again look as a very simple, as a very legitimate transaction. But if that wasn't enough, there is even a way to make it even worse. When you're doing a DNS request, so if you're not specifying any information, it will just use the DNS server that is currently configured on the machine. But again, you can also choose which DNS servers do you like to approach to. So if by adding one more parameter, I can actually directly address my server in the internet and pass pretty much all the information that I want. Since I'm going to use my custom DNS server, I can pretty much add information that otherwise won't make sense for the internet servers, but it will make sense to mine. And then I can win more buffer, more payload that I can actually exfiltrate each time. Now here, and I'll get to it back on the best practice slide, here there is something that can be done. It's wise to limit the DNS servers that you allow your employees to access from a corporate network. It doesn't make sense to allow everybody to choose whichever DNS servers he prefers to work with. So this option can be mitigated eventually. However, still, when a hacker controls a domain and controls the name server for that domain, eventually even using the corporate or the company's DNS server, it will lead to having an it on his server from the other side, and information can be exfiltrated. Any questions?
The secure DNS concept, right? How far is it getting anybody implement?
So the secure DNS actually has as little to do with that and has more to do with the way that the information that you will receive. DNS by nature is not encrypted, it is not obfuscated. So essentially a man-in-the-middle attack can result in somebody giving you a bad answer. Secure DNS comes to solve that problem, that you will always have faith that the integrity of the answers is right. However, if you do still craft a query to your own domain, there is nothing that secure DNS can say that's an anomaly. It's just you trying to query some info about safebridge.com. It can be very legitimate action. Other questions? Okay. Going back to the presentation, again, the reason why DNS is working is, again, we're piggybacking on a mandatory protocol. We're taking a protocol that people are still thinking that is used for networking or core interneting purposes, but actually it's been used to transfer information. If you're resourceful enough and if you're consistent enough, you can make it work for different ways, and one of these ways is, again, to exfiltrate information. Limiting DNS access is still not enough. Again, it will prevent the hacker from connecting directly to his DNS server. However, if he still owns the domain, if he still controls the name server for his domain, then eventually any request will have to reach his server before an alternative answer can be received. Some of the best practice to stay protected, and I'm sure it's not gonna scare any of you. Close whatever resource you can. Again, this goes back to the ICMP. People allow some protocols, they don't fully understand the potential. Hackers see that as an opportunity, and they piggyback these resources to basically get in and out. This goes to hardening workstations to only accept executables that make sense to your day-to-day job in your company. It goes to allowing, on the network perspective, only the protocols that serve the business and nothing that is just open there for just in case opportunity. because again, hackers enumerate these things and exploit them. Not the vulnerability, exploit their logical functionality to basically backfire and use them to get away. Limit what you can close. Like in the DNS example, okay, DNS has a vulnerability in the way that you can query a domain and get up information traveling. However, you don't want to give an open access and let anyone access any DNS service that they want. It's bad practice. So you can choose one or two, or maybe have a corporate DNS servers that will be the only focal point for their workstation, and therefore you reduce the attack surface. Trust but verify. This is a new idea that we're constantly getting reminded of. You're doing a great job buying these security products, invest time in thinking about where to deploy them, and even configuring them to what we believe will be the best outcome. However, maintenance happens, human mistakes happens. Sometimes hackers hack into these controllers and change them. These all dynamically happens. This gives the element of surprise. You don't want to be surprised. You need to trust when the IT or your security personnel tell you that this firewall covers this protocol or that this security control give you this benefit. However, you have to verify it, and you have to do it continuously, because if there's a gap in there, then a hacker can use that to make his way either in or out. As Daniel mentioned, today's thinking about breaches has changed. It's no longer a singular event. There is no breach point. There's a series of points in time that eventually leads into a breach. And it becomes from the initial compromise all the way to stealing your information. And each of these points, each of these bullets, you can interfere and you can try to stop the breach. It doesn't necessarily have to be the infiltration, it doesn't necessarily have to be the exfiltration. However, it does give you the space and the options to operate. In each company, each risk management personnel, each budget, you can categorize it and say, okay, I'm going to invest more on the exfiltration because I feel that my business understands that. I feel that I can show good results and reduce the surface. Some can say, okay, we can go more to the infiltration. We can put more walls, we can put more virtualization to make it harder for an attacker to get on our computer to begin with. But it's important to spread the risk and to invest in these different verticals, because each of them will make the hacker sweat more and to be more and more determined to move between them. So having said that, having understanding that the hackers has techniques and these techniques serve them. And these are not one-time efforts. These are the hacker playbook. This is breach methods that he constantly uses, and we can see different threat actors that are mimicking each other, and the CISO panels has mentioned, and they're collaborating. This knowledge, these ideas, they're no longer siloed. They sell them to each other. They build kits. They have them shared. So how can we be prepared? How can we actually go forward with that? What we believe the next step is basically to automate a red team. A red team that is constantly sitting on your premises, sitting within your networks, and tries these hackers, tries these different breach methods, and tells you today if this is happening. And then you get the time, you get the buffer to act, to prevent, to monitor, to do whatever you choose to do using your risk appetite and not be surprised by it. By engaging in this automated red team thinking, by thinking that you go beyond vulnerabilities. Again, it's very tempting to say that vulnerabilities are our biggest problem, and only if we're going to patch everything will be safe. As I showed you today, much of what I did today is not a vulnerability. Maybe it's misconfiguration, maybe it's abuse. Either way, there's no CVE for it. So this is one point. The second is the continuous element. Again, doing pen testing is great, and verifying these different security controllers and different network topologies is excellent. However, it's only a point in time. And hackers are very determined. They will sit there and they will wait for their day to happen. It can be today, tomorrow, next month. They're not in a hurry to get anywhere. They have information at their end, and they're just looking for the right opportunity to get it. By doing a continuous validation of your systems, you get the benefit of knowing that you have all the infrastructure safe and working for you. And third is going horizontal. Again, many of the companies are attempting to invest in one point or the other. Some say that infiltration will kill the chain in the beginning. Some say that lateral movement needs to be handled with. The truth is, there is no silver bullet. If there was one, we'll all be very happy right now, much more scared. But the truth is that there's different layers in the kill chain, and all of them needs to be investigated and checked in. That's all. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
So a lot of the viruses are using DNS to send information to the CC servers, and a lot of them fail. So how do you monitor those or to stop that or to signal that?
That's a great question, and I do think that this is exactly the trade-off between relying on technology and having a SOC team, a human element that can see these different logs, different behaviors, and determine that this is not right. So I do think the answers come investing in technology and investing in people that will be able to comprehend and enhance this technology to make decisions.
So just really quickly, since it's very modest, I will talk about what this actually means, right? So this is the dilemma that our CEO faced when he was CISO of LivePerson. He hired a bunch of hackers to try to hack his network. Again, it was a point in time he couldn't afford to keep them all employed. And at the same time, ITSIG was working on red team engagements and created a new language to create these breach methodologies in an automated fashion. And that is the problem that we're trying to solve, making CISOs sleep a little bit better at night, automating this process so you can think like a hacker and have that continuous validation. So if you're interested, and you're going to get breached at some point, let us hack your network first. We'll take the red pill, and we'll find that breach methodology that you need to close before you get attacked. All right?
Does anybody have any other questions?
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And this is a plaque of
Oh,
appreciation.
wow.
Oh, wow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know.
So you were really a bad guy?
No, I'm a good guy.
You're a good guy? Well, but when he hired you, were you a bad guy first? And then
No, I was never a bad guy. I was interested in the field because there's a huge challenge in it. I see it like the ultimate chess game. Try to have companies like thinking what the other guy didn't think about.
so I was curious on how he flipped you. 'Cause you were a bad
I
guy.
didn't flip.
Very good. Do something with these two.
Okay, actually I gave my last card today. I was not prepared. Right?
Yes. Sorry, one second.
Sorry.
I'm really researching that.
But at the same time, they just, I'm gonna just charge my phone.
Okay. Where's your card?
Actually, I ran out of
You ran
cards.
out of cards.
I was
Well,
not,
take your
not
card.
prepared for
Oh, I'll take your.
Save Bridge.
Just.
Bridge.com.
Okay, sorry. Arthur, thank you. Invictus, I've got to look them up.
Okay.
You feel?
You can look me up on
No,
LinkedIn.
I
too.
go there.
You're office in New York?
No, we are headquartered in the Valley. Right on the. So you like our stories? That's good. Thank you.
That's the question. They have a red team Slack. I had no idea what that was until just now. Like, it's not clear. Like, their message is terrible. Anyway,
okay, I can run ping, I can run trace,
I
but you're
guess
not really expert
what I'm
training,
concerned
very
about is
useful information.
we have customers right now.
If I can control the payload of the ping,
Right.
and
That
I
are
have
ready to buy?
64
Oh, yeah,
bytes,
20%.
I
Yeah.
can
Oh,
choose
yeah,
whichever-
so that's
whichever
what
they
the
will be.
problem was.
I can fill them with information. And it will be seen like
Well, we
doing
figure
just
this
the
out.
ping, but the
We're
actual payload of the
right,
ping.
we've been doing
Ask
blockchain
people how many times they examine
on-site
the
support,
payload of the
managed
ping.
services,
Everybody knows
data
that
backup
thing is
stuff.
working, but
All these financial
nobody actually asks what's the payload. It's actually times something.
Right, but what,
This
I mean, what would
cybersecurity
the
thing
payload
is scaring all the,
Credit card.
affect the system? All right, so I'll ping a system with my credit card. It's still, the data that gets entered, it's still gonna be, here's how much time it took to, for the ping by
The way that I went from a very pure network with information that you have database outside.
you know, it's just not what they're.
I ping my own server or any server outside of your company. There's a process like credit card.
This is not a one-time do it. You could hire a
Because I ping it myself to the
and
credit
that's
card.
what it's like.
Twice a year.
That's
And
what
I
they
already
want.
aware
I
of
was
it
gonna
from the
wonder
other
if
side. I'm receiving everything. And I just
I'll
drop
do.
the
It's
payload.
a one-time
And I'm
thing.
rebuilding the
These are all
database.
broken fixes.
And all you see
Is that
is
really?
just
Yeah, maybe every happy with a checkbox. You know,
And they find that one methodology that we're going through, what we didn't talk about is the
Yeah,
fact
but
that
the HTTP
we
is
have a
the prime
research team,
example of
right?
how
These
you have
guys are
security.
8200 is really intelligent, and so we have a team, R&D team in Israel that is like looking constantly for reach methodology. So it's not just a one-time thing.
What I'm saying, I want to ask you, one of the things that we want to eventually get to, because we
Well, you're right, HTTP would be clear specs. You're parsing, right, you're parsing.
management,
Thank you.
customers, equipment.
Or same thing if they put it in JPEG.
Service or no? Is
Lego,
it,
right?
is this part of the service?
It's a subscription so that you continually get the different breach methodologies and
A signature and say, oh my God, patches right away, or do you do the patching? How does it work?
no, we're
Now,
we're
are you
just
using
focused
my
on the
computer?
written
Do you have your own
aspect, right? We
computer?
don't have the
I have
written
mine, but we can
so
use
it's
yours.
just the written, yeah, so at some point we'll have
you have
those.
here already.
It isn't hooked up, so I was gonna say, if you wanna use yours, I'll let you use yours.
So right now
I'll
we'll
finish
say,
doing your deck.
okay,
Is
this
my
is
deck
the
there?
methodology
I can give you,
and
you know, this is actually, I'm writing the deck for CACs.
Oh, you're writing
Yeah,
it
right.
down.
I'm writing a
yeah, so
deck
then
that I
you
just
go
found out I
fix
gotta
your
give out
IPS
today.
or firewall, yeah, and then you rerun the test again,
But
right?
it's ongoing.
It's constant.
Wow, that's cool. So you do it
So it's-
yourself.
and-
Your business here, where you
Yeah.
basically trying to
So that's
It's
red
not
team
managed
or
services,
automate
right?
it.
It's not a SOC, it's a platform.
Right, a
It's
platform,
technology.
yeah.
So if you wanna use mine, I'll set mine up and get mine off, or if you wanna use yours, which would make it easier for
Really
me,
good question.
I'll use yours.
So we're not,
Excuse me,
the way
can
it's
you use
deployed,
yours? Okay.
it's in the cloud,
plug
but,
it in there.
you know, some
Okay,
of our
that's
initial customers right now are saying, we don't
We
want all of that in the cloud,
Well,
because now
I just
somebody
found out
hacked your
I
cloud,
have to
know
do a
exactly
deck
how to reach us, so they want
right
like
now that I didn't know I was doing, that somebody wants,
So that's what we've been doing.
today.
Yeah.
Because it sounded like to me too, it's not like one
Like
size
you
fits
just
all.
gave me a bunch of ideas, right? It's just about monitoring how
But
long.
yes, correct, right, so the way we started out right now is a network focused solution, right? Then, but we're creating
I really
so
appreciate
we'll
it.
be able to extend to the endpoints.
Right.
Give me a
So
second.
basically now you cover your.
Oh.
Borrowing the power, thank you.
By the way, you didn't know that that captures, that, you think that's just a charger.
Go right ahead. That's fine, I got nothing to hide.
So right now it's focused on the network, right? So we have different simulators that we throw in.
now what I'm not gonna have is a map. Well, let's use the old down arrow. The down arrow. The down arrow.
VGA,
I don't know if I can use the down arrow.
I'm trying to figure out what you, okay, video wise, I'm just trying to figure out what you got as video.
Yeah, there should be VG around and back here.
Good, perfect. No, well, it may not be, because guess what? After this session, the next session is roundtable, and then we'll give it away at Surface 3.
Okay.
So, people are hanging around because
People
they
are
want
hanging
a laptop.
Yeah.
We're giving away a Surface 3 Pro.
I've already taken mine back 3 times.
Up, up.
The virus is still going. It won't be done. Who is this all? Thompson. Just what you just read that.
It does.
I'm gonna fix that up.
He just picks a random camera and whatever he said.
virus. Absolutely. There is a virus that does that. That I know for a fact. So I have seen that as a virus, but guess what? If they're gonna rebuild your machine,
That was on a rebuilt machine.
no, if they're gonna rebuild the machine to get rid of the virus, go for it. What OS is on the computer? What operating system? Windows 7, Windows 8,
10.
10?
10.
Who's doing the drawing? Is that you or John?
It's not me on purpose. Oh, you're doing it?
Oh,
Okay.
he is.
So what time is that?
How many do you have of these? What's-
5:30.
Five. This should be the last one? 6.
Do you mind taking a picture of the winner with the circles? I'm not
Good.
gonna do it public anything, just want it for
Yeah.
private
Say,
distribution.
absolutely.
Yes.
My pleasure. You leaving?
Yeah.
I am, you could just send email or text it to me either way.
Okay, and then
Oh, we're
the
gonna
other
get these
thing.
people to move up, and we're gonna ask them questions.
Yeah.
Done? You have my papers. No, still got 5 minutes. You want, well,
You got more than
make sure
5,
you have-
because I think they extended it like every 10 minutes.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah.
Because the other class
10
was
minutes
still
still,
going.
okay. So Paul, where are you from? Howard. I'm from QED National. QED National is, I know we've had contracts with them.
What do you guys do?
So, a few things. So, we're an IT services company. Staff augmentation. We have management consulting practices, which include enterprise architecture, information security practice. We also resell
What?
hardware, software.
Well, I just found out I gotta write a deck for a presentation in February, but they want it today. It's like,
And I head up the
shit's gonna change.
management
So,
consulting practices.
asking me for a deck today is like saying, okay,
What do you do it for?
we're jerks, we know we're jerks, but we want you to help anyway. You okay?
Yeah, so this.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, well, and
Glad I brought it.
ITOT
Yeah.
convergence is an issue.
Yeah, sure.
That's the
Yeah,
DR in
that's
there.
mostly what this is gonna be.
Yeah, so this will be right up front with
So,
some of the.
so chime in.
All right, no, this will be a good topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
How long is it?
I've been applied for 16 years.
Yeah, but his dad
How long
said it was the
security?
But yeah, only
About half of that time.
Yep.
he was Andre Darden is the MTA guy.
That's, I don't think that's Andre.
That was his.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I have him confused with something. Ken is for the Arab. Arab.
Hi, Tony, nice to meet you. Paul Silva.
Power Authority?
New York Power Authority, right, yeah.
Up in White Plains? or
In White Plains, yep.
Yeah, I live up there, near the White Plains.
Oh, do you? Oh, okay. Oh, okay, all right, well, which part there? No, I didn't know. Oh, okay, all right. I commute down from Connecticut every day, so.
Yeah.
It's not as far as you think.
Where in Connecticut?
I live in Danbury.
I commuted to Manhattan every day. I live in Princeton, New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
I don't know whose commute is worse. It's not a contest, by the way.
Well, mine's not too bad. It's about 45 minutes most days.
Oh, there's much better.
Yeah, so, oh, I don't come down here. I come to White Plains. So, yeah, down here is just a different story.
traffic, you know.
Some of them like up town. And this year is the way the office. Other than that, the three big.
Yeah.
Taking that one, that's what mine was.
That's right, no, that works.
Yeah, I know people that live in the boroughs. Takes
Yeah.
them long, over an hour.
Yeah, the long life, that business is really long life.
Well, a lot of traffic, a lot of traffic on that, a lot of people.
Very,
I
very
grew up
few
on Long
restaurants.
Island, I would never have driven half a dozen commute. I know people that do it.
I used to live in the, and I used to take the train.
Yeah.
This is,
It's pretty good.
yeah, it is, it's pretty reliable.
Where'd you live?
I lived in Babylon.
Yeah. Oh, Lived in a number of places, grew up in East Meadow.
Oh, okay, I know East, yeah, I know the island pretty well, so, sure.
Uh,
You said, where are you now, you said?
Princeton.
In Princeton, okay.
Yeah, I moved down there for a job with Merrill Lynch and planted roots. I can't pull my wife out.
All right.
So Tony's got his thing. This is Tony. This is me. We've all got too much paper. That's okay. We all decided we don't trust PowerPoint.
You need a backup
For-
plan, right?
for our
Yeah,
notes.
you
That's
do
an
need
age,
a
it's an age
backup.
thing.
Yeah.
I still say, Michael, give me the paper, I'll read it.
All right, we're gonna rely on notes. And you
Always have a backup plan. That's good.
So we're using podium mic, right?
I noticed the mic hasn't been used. Zoom, people
Oh,
who are
actually,
speaking don't
it's
seem-
just us. We don't.
And then, Andrea, when you were speaking, I don't think you were using the mic.
I was using the mic, but it was kind of sitting over here, so it wasn't like.
I didn't think I
Yeah.
heard it, yeah. I heard you fine.
Yep.
Yeah. The last gentleman wasn't here.
I didn't mean. I didn't mean. That's last night. The guy was so out of it. You heard him. Oh, this is vegetarian. You sure it's vegetarian? Oh, this is vegetarian.
Vegetarian meat.
It's got bacon in it. I'm a
It's
cheese.
Oh,
vegetarian.
yeah.
bacon.
hilarious.
Not made of soy, made of pig.
And then when we walked in this morning, the first thing she saw was the bacon. There were trays of
Oh,
bacon this
trays
morning.
of bacon.
There were just lots of bacon this morning.
You know, it's one of the few things that actually messes bacon.
No, it was
We
the
ate
last thing
together
I,
last night.
it was the last thing I cooked.
I was gonna say.
That and pepperoni. I don't like bacon.
So pork made its way out of my diet very early. But bacon I kept up eating. Who doesn't like bacon,
so
really?
tasty,
You know?
yeah.
I don't like bacon.
You don't like
Salami
bacon?
and pepperoni were in my diet until I realized that. But, you know, those of us who are vegetarians, it's a fabulous product on the side.
Morningstar bar.
Yes, bacon.
Yeah,
better than
there's imitation bacon. People are mixed on that. Some people think it's
It's
cardboard.
Well, this one, you put it
But,
in the oven,
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
it's crispier than bacon and it's lighter.
I've made BLTs out of that, and pretty good.
I like it. I do. So I don't miss bacon because you can't tempt me with bacon.
And it's fun what's happened over the last way of everything. People putting bacon in ice cream, bacon in scotch.
Bacon on
Yeah, bacon on vegetarian pasta.
Bacon and chocolate now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
distilled bacon will come
It's,
next.
hear this stuff, I think it's a joke, but it's not a joke, it's a fact. Yeah. Well, we're running 10 minutes behind. We're gonna try to convince these folks to. No?
Here comes the dark side.
So, not to, don't tell me things I shouldn't know. But certainly, one of the points here is, so there are cost drivers to convert to that. Less than 1/10 of the cost many times, and sometimes 1/3 of the cost. Put equipment, put it on 19,000 that's why forcing. And so that cost model is very compelling, but of course it needs regulatory risk and also a certain type of organization and systems, not just because of proper risk management concerns.
Just a matter of
Entrenchment.
entrenchment, different groups have been in control of different things.
Yep. And, job security. So are you, is that the dynamic?
It has been for many, many years. One of the things that I'm seeing is that we're talking more energy.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a movement.
Across the operation.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
the traditional IT organization.
Oh, yeah, yeah. When I first started with this company now, they were just totally different beasts. Barely knew what they did. They didn't know what I did.
Yep.
Different, different networks, different equipment, and never been twain shall meet.
Right.
We meet all the time. I have more of an understanding on that side of it. They have more of an understanding of commonalities. So there's a lot more conversation. I think that's a big step in the right direction. And we're looking at what are some things that we can do to protect the folks.
Yeah, so what are the new controls instead of the area?
Yeah, and we're also looking at things like, how do we blend governance and procedural things.
Right.
So what
And how do you make sure that those stakeholders that were really treated separately, the operational folks were not really treated like a cyber concern, right?
Mhm.
It wasn't.
Right, right.
So how do you not only scope them into a policy, but also include the stakeholders to be governance?
How do we look at, a lot of us, we look at
we're going to talk this afternoon about industrial controls and supervisory control systems, otherwise known as SCADA systems. For most of us, for those of us who are from Brooklyn, we call them SCADA systems. So this is an area that we've been spending a lot of time in lately, and after 9/11, the executive order was issued to identify, prioritize, and protect from terrorists critical infrastructure. And the agencies were charged with identifying that critical infrastructure that needed to be protected. And as you can read on the board, there are 16 of them. And what we're going to do today is focus on transportation, in particular the rail systems. I think that's something that I bet more than half the folks here in the room probably use the rail systems to arrive here today. So we think that that's a good topic to use. But what you're going to hear about can apply to the other critical infrastructures as well. And then we will look at it from a risk perspective once we go through the details. Transport systems have gone through, railway systems have gone through major changes. I've been riding the subways since I'm a little boy here in New York City. I'm born and bred here. So for over 40 years, we're riding the subways, and they've changed quite a bit. And you can see by what we have up on the board here. I don't know how many of you, some of you will not, but most of you may remember tokens. You go to the window, guy behind the window, you slide in your coin, he sends you a coin back, you put it in the thing, all mechanical. Now we use electronic ticketing. You can buy your tickets, you can buy your Metro card, you can swipe it, payments are online. Big change in the rail systems. Underground in the subways, for the last few years now, you can actually